Budget Committee to order. It's Monday, March 18th, 2019, 7 p.m., and we're in the Aldermanic Chamber. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman at Large, Laurie Wilshire.
Here.
Alderman at Large, Ben Clemens.
Here.
Alderman at Large, Michael O'Brien's present. Alderwoman at Large, Shoshana Kelly.
Here.
Alderman at Large, David Tenza. Present. Alderman Jan Schmidt.
Here.
Also in attendance is Alderman Jettie and Alderman Lopez, and our chair, Richard Dowd.
Present. Okay. This evening is the first of our series of budget meetings with the department heads. And we'll run it pretty much the same as it's been the last few years. We typically, when we run these meetings and have other things on the agenda, we let our employees go home early so they come up first. They don't need to sit here for the rest of the meeting, unless they want to. So what we'll do is the departments will come up on each night that they're scheduled. They'll give a brief overview of their department and perhaps the sections within the departments. There is a detailed explanation in the book. It tells you in more depth. But most of you were all here last year, so you should be pretty familiar with all the departments at this point. We will listen to their presentation, then we'll open it up for questions. And the questions can be relative to their revenue, to their expenditure appropriations, and if they have something on their capital projects. We will take notes, and during the wrap-up sessions, which will be a couple of months from now, that's when we'll entertain motions for additions or subtractions to the budget, if anyone wants to make one. In the end, it will take, there's a recommendation from this committee as to the budget, but it will take 10 votes on the board to increase the budget over what the mayor recommended. So just keep that in mind. Are there any questions about the process before we get going? Everybody has the schedule, right? Okay. Very good. Okay, so the first department that we will be addressing, public comment. Is there anyone that would like to speak in public comment on anything on the agenda? Other than the department that's going to come up in a minute. None. Communications?
There is none.
Okay. All right, so the first department is Public Health and Community Services. You can come up in a group if you want to do it that way. I'll let your department head kick it off as soon as she's settled. And you can introduce your team. Does everyone know the members of the Budget Committee?
I don't believe everyone knows the members of the Budget Committee because we have a new manager, our Chief Public Health Nurse, Kim Bernard.
Okay.
But what I will do is we'll introduce ourselves, and then the Budget Committee, if you don't mind introducing yourselves, if you
Sure.
don't mind.
Yep.
Chair. All right, so good evening. Bobby Bagley, Director for the Division of Public Health and Community Services, and thank you this evening for having us. I have with me, on my left is our Finance Manager, Jenna Graziano, and on my right is Kim Bernard, who is our Chief Public Health Nurse of our Community Health Department. Heidi Peak is the Health Officer for the Environmental Health Department, and Bob Mack is our Welfare Officer for our Welfare Department.
Okay. So, I'm Rick Dowd. I'm Chair of the Budget Committee. Let's start over here.
Laurie Wilshire, President of the Board.
Michael O'Brien, Clerk of the Committee, Vice President of the Board.
Ben Clemens, Alderman at Large.
Jan Schmidt from Ward 1.
Dave Tenza, Alderman at Large.
Ernie Jetty, Ward 5, Alderman.
Shoshana Kelly, Alderman at Large.
Thought I could be anonymous because I wasn't on the committee just for tonight. No? Tom Lopez, Alderman, Ward 4.
So just for Tom Lopez and Alderman Jetty are not on the Budget Committee, but they're here to listen. Okay.
All right, thank you, and thank you for taking the time to introduce yourselves to our staff and our managers. As I stated before, Bobby Bagley, Director of the Division of Public Health and Community Services, and we're here to talk about the budget that we have for the division as a whole, and each of the department managers will go through their department budgets and explain what we put in as a request and the increases and decreases across those budgets. As you're all aware of, the Division of Public Health and Community Services is the first and only, and we're still very proud to share accredited health department in the state of New Hampshire. Our services and the function are to promote, protect, and preserve the health of the community in Nashua, which also extends into the greater Nashua area as well. Our main focus areas are around prevention of epidemics and the spread of disease, the protection against environmental hazards, promoting of healthy behaviors, preparing for and responding to emergencies and public health recovery services, as well as providing emergency welfare assistance to qualified community members. What I wanted to do was go through what I have in here, because you've had the opportunity to read through the report that was submitted, and if there's questions afterwards, we'll definitely entertain those. But for the sake of expediency, to go through the budget that I have for community services. As a whole, the division came in at 1.89%. The mayor's budget request was to come in at 1.75%. And as we go through our budgets, we'll explain why our percentage is a little over that. Very much needed for the services that we provide to the community. So we're hoping that you'll understand that. The mission at the Division of Public Health and Community Services, as I alluded to, is to promote, protect, and preserve the health and the well-being of our greater Nashua region through leadership and community collaboration. And we have a vision to have an informed, safe, healthy, and resilient community where all people can thrive and be healthy. And so the services that we provide are warranted and much needed in our community. Let's see. I think I'll go through these pages because you have the pages here. And I believe we start with community services on page 179 of your book.
Before we get started, I would tell the Budget Committee that the revenue for the Public Health and Community Services starts on page 42 through 44, and the appropriations start on page 181 and run through 189. Okay.
In community services, we don't have a revenue section, so community health and environmental health and welfare, we'll talk about those pieces.
Yeah, it's for the whole group.
Okay. On page 179 for community services, and our, that department which I manage, there are 3 funded positions under the city. My position, as well as epidemiologist at 95%, and our health promotion specialist. And then the other staff are funded through grants. If we look at the budget for the appropriations, which are sorry.
Mr. Chair, can I just point out while she's looking that for any of the public that might be viewing this, there is a PDF online on the website if you were trying to look at the numbers we're all looking at.
Right.
Okay.
On the city website.
All right, so the appropriations on page 181. And when we look at the budget changes for community services, there has been an increase for heating and oil, and that was based on the amount of increase for the heating oil over into the next fiscal year as provided by Dan Coogan and Janet Graziano from our finance department. You'll also see there's a slight increase in the budget for water of $63. Conference and seminars, which are underlined 55400, there's an increase of $2,200, and that is because when we are doing that health promotion piece, we do conferences and seminars. And we had 10 conferences and seminars to increase our staffing capacity and our staffing knowledge. And because we have a full staff right now of epidemiologists, with our health promotion specialists, there's specific training and that needs to be considered for that staff, as well as for myself being a registered nurse, as well as the division director. And so we've increased that by $2,200. The staff have also been fortunate enough, because of the work that we've been doing, to present at conferences at the national level. And so we need to have the funds to be able to go to those national conferences to present on the information and the work that we're doing in the city of Nashville, which we're very proud of. Postage and delivery has also gone up. You can see very slightly by $15, again, based on the increase in information that we received from Dan Coogan and from Janet Graziano. Our marketing and outreach has decreased by $500. The expectation is that we'll be able to cover some of that cost through some of the grants through community services. Our miscellaneous supplies, that has increased by $500. And again, as we are doing health promotion in the community, for some of the resources that we need to put our information out and communicate on the projects and programs that we're working on, some of the line items don't directly serve or have funding aligned to them, so we have that miscellaneous supplies for that. And there's been an increase of about $30 in this budget as well for the subscriptions, again, because of the professional status that some of the staff hold, and this allows for us to stay current in the information that we receive. Overall, in community services, because the work that we do aligns with the division departments as a whole to meet the core functions of public health, this budget that we put forth, although it's slightly above the percentage that the mayor asked us to come in, the amounts that are needed here are very much warranted. Now I'll turn it over to Kimberly Bernard, who will talk about the community health department.
Do you want to take questions as we go along, or do you want to wait till the end?
As we go along.
As we go along, okay.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on the first part? Alderman Tenza?
Thank you. Director Bagley, in the first part of your budget talks about the turnover you've had in your staff. Can you just address that for us? And is there anything that you're asking for that will help keep people in your office? Is there any other way we can help support keeping people? Because we'll also note that your office is a big part of the success that the city's had in fighting the opioid epidemic most recently, and something we should be highlighting and helping to give you the resources you need. So can you just comment on that, please?
The staffing turnover that was experienced over at the division was mostly in community health, and it was with the within our nursing department. Nursing, because it is a licensed and professional position that we have, when those positions became open, it's very hard to fill those positions because the salaries are not as high as expected for nurses who've had a number of years of experience in practice. And public health practice is a specialty area practice, and so, again, trying to get folks to come in that have the experience that we need is difficult at the salary that we're expecting or we're asking people to come in under. So the nurses that we have hired, I am very happy to say that we are fully staffed in community health. Kim Bernard is one of our newer staff members that have come on. Some of the nurses, when they come to work in public health, end up taking a significant pay cut to come and work for the city. And so the staff that's here are people that want to be here, that are dedicated to serving the community and working with us in public health. And so those positions stayed open for a while because we also wanted to make sure that we brought in people that had quality experience because of what we're dealing with the opioid crisis, with lead, and some of the other programs that Kim will talk about.
Okay, As each person speaks, please give your name again for the transcriptionist so she knows who's talking and, okay. Any other questions? Oh,
Thank you. If I could
Alderman
do a
Kelly.
quick, thank you. If I could do a quick follow-up on that, is when you're talking about being competitive, is that across the board in the industry it's hard to compete because of public versus private, or is it a specific to Nashua and what you have available?
So do you want to say my name again? Bobby Bagley, Director for the Division of Public Health and Community Services. It's across the board in public health. We looked at, what's being offered in Massachusetts. The salaries down in Massachusetts are a lot higher than what we can offer here in New Hampshire. But we did look at salaries that our sister health department, Manchester, offers, and we also looked at salaries that the state offers in public health. So across the board for nurses coming into public health practice, the salaries are extremely lower than what nurses get working in hospitals or in the community setting. So across the board for public health nurses, it's usually a lower salary.
Thank you.
any additional questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Kim Bernard, I'm the Chief Public Health Nurse and Manager of the Community Health Department. I'm going to speak to you starting on page 183, the the Community Health Budget. Some of the changes I'm just going to review. Under wages, we have a decrease of about 38.31, and we were able to take some money from this piece of the wages, the per diem wages specifically, to cover other public health nurse those essential positions. And we were able to fill those, as Bobby had mentioned. So we are now fully staffed. Disposal services, we needed to increase by about $1,200. The need for disposal services to increase was in conjunction with our substance misuse grant. The next line item, equipment repairs and maintenance. We did not have any money appropriated to that line item in the 2019 fiscal year, but in 2018 we had $745, so we requested $800. We do have a new van, and we're anticipating that we're going to be doing some maintenance and repairs on that. Educational supplies was increased to reflect spending patterns, and that was $2,500. Medical supplies was decreased by about $2,000, and that was also to reflect spending patterns. Vaccine and medications, we increased that by about $1,676, and that was increased to reflect spending patterns, and we're on track for FY19 to spend about $22,000 there. A new line item that we added was miscellaneous supplies. As you can see, we did not have that for FY 2019, but we added that for items that are not covered by the city or grant budgets. So miscellaneous things like items for events and whatnot. And publications increased just slightly by $100 to $300, and that's reflective of our need for professional publications for our staff. Any questions?
Questions? No. The subscriptions, are they getting more expensive, or just more people are going to be getting them?
We are in full staff now, so it would be more people getting those subscriptions, yes.
All right.
A question.
Alderman Lopez.
Is the reduction in medical supplies linked in any way to the lack of operation of your former van? Just seems a little odd that we'd be in the middle of an outbreak of hepatitis A, and I mean, I'm not sure if the needle exchange program, any money's coming out of that, but you need less medical supplies?
We also have grants that cover those items that you had just mentioned, such as our substance misuse grant that we utilize for those.
So we've brought in more
Syringes.
grant money?
Yes, yes, yes.
All set?
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I believe I'm next.
Yes.
You said it in the right order.
Heidi P. Kokoka, Health Officer and Manager of Environmental Health. I didn't know if you guys wanted to go over our revenues or not, because that's what I'm accustomed to doing.
Revenues are on page 42.
43 for environmental
43.
health specifically. And we made really no significant changes to those, and the ones that seem to have, where the actuals are low, are typically that those are seasonal. And that, for instance, all of the pool licenses expire at the end of April, so they're all renewed at that time. Solid waste in July.
Okay. No questions on revenue? Nope, all right.
And then we are on,
185.
yes. 4 changes to our budget. We reduced our consulting services line by $2,500. We had tried last year to use some money for a consultant for training, and that really didn't pan out with changing staff. So this is going to be for our mosquito surveillance alone for our vendor. And you can see that what we spent last year was $6,000. We're bumping that up to $7,500 just in case. I know that our vendors' expenses have gone up, and I also know that the state is going to be analyzing for mosquitoes for Jamestown Canyon virus this year as well, which is a change. And so we don't really know what that means so far as costs. So it's got a little bit of a buffer in there. Under 55, other services, Janet added a line for us for 4G service. We are in the beginning stages of fine-tuning our licensing and permitting software, and we will have tablets in the field and not be so mired in paper, and we need 3 of those to have that capability in the field. To help that, we offset that a little bit with our cellular telephone line, the next line down. So we decrease that. And then we increase conferences and seminars by $300. And those were our only changes.
Any questions? Alderman Clemmons?
With the mosquito surveillance, is there any money in here for spraying?
No, there isn't specifically. We would have to come before the board to ask you for that money. And that's kind of been an agreement that's been carried out over the years, and it's a good question, and I appreciate it. But the things that we've done on our end are already in place. In the beginning of January, I signed off on the emergency permit to allow spraying to occur. So that is all the approvals are in place. That's the most cumbersome piece of it. That takes months to accomplish. So it's a matter of coming before the board and asking for money.
Follow
If I
up?
could follow up, yeah, I mean, in the past approximately, or what would you think something like that would cost? And I guess it would depend on what we were looking at, right?
It would depend mostly on frequency and how large of an area we were spraying. And to date, we have not sprayed for mosquitoes for public health reasons. So it would be rather new to us. Our vendor would be able to supply us with a good ballpark of what those costs would be.
I know we've sprayed in the past, years ago, correct?
No,
Never?
not to my
Or
knowledge.
it was in the, or at least it was in the, there was a line item in the budget previously. Say 10 years ago.
Maybe there was. Maybe we put some money in a line just in case. Oh, you know what you're probably thinking of is the larviciding. What we did, and this was before a lot of the work within the catch basins was done, we did at least one full year of really aggressive larviciding. And DPW has been maintaining those catch basins really well, and they're not clogged full of debris anymore. They're not a good breeding ground. So that, yes, that's what that money was for.
Okay.
All set?
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there anything in the budget associated with Lyme disease and ticks?
There isn't a good method for what we would conduct would be surveillance if there were anything other than our education. And we do that as part of our educational fund that we use specifically. We give out those tick spoons and provide education to the community. The scientists in the state have developed a method for collecting ticks, but it's kind of rudimentary, and I'm tempted to say they haven't worked all the bugs out of it. Yeah, but it's not something that we can replicate here as well yet.
Okay.
We have cheerfully volunteered to help them figure that out a little bit further. There is one doctor from UNH, Alan Eaton, who is most involved in that. And in more rural parts of the state, they're gleaning a lot of their tick data from moose and deer kill.
Okay. All right, thank you. All set? All right,
Thank you.
next up.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bob Mack. I'm the Welfare Officer, Manager of the Welfare Department. Just briefly, the Welfare Department basically provides general assistance to low-income households or households experiencing some sort of financial hardship. We operate under the mandate of RSA 165, which says, the state statute that says that every municipality must provide this type of assistance in some way, shape, or form. So we fulfill that obligation. We provide assistance with basic rent, food, personal care items, some utility assistance, occasionally medication or prescription assistance, and occasionally some burial or cremation assistance. So with that, I can move right into some of the budget line items. On page 44 are the recoveries. And basically, we've seen more than expected in the form of recoveries in the Welfare Department for this current fiscal year. So we projected an increase of an additional $2,000 in that line. Basically, welfare recoveries are generated through either personal reimbursements from applicants who have received assistance and just pay back the assistance as they are able. We also get some Social Security reimbursements if people that are pending disability benefits get assistance from us and then are granted a benefit. We may get some direct payment from the Social Security Administration through the state of New Hampshire. And we also get some reimbursements through property liens if someone is a property owner and some action takes place on the property we may get some reimbursement through that. So that's basically how we gather recoveries. I don't know if there are any questions on that.
Questions on the revenues?
Okay.
So page 180.
Moving, yeah, the administration line, there aren't really any real significant changes in the budget on page 187. In our budget discussions with Director Bagley and the managers, it was determined that we should add some miscellaneous lines for any miscellaneous expenditures, so we created for the welfare administration budget a miscellaneous supplies line for $200. That was the only change in that area.
Okay. Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you. So under fringe benefits, I see that you dropped your request by about, looks about almost $30,000.
That may be correct.
Gina Graziano. The fringe benefit expenses are done by the finance department, and it's based on the total benefits for the city, and then it's allocated back to the departments based on staffing. So there are a lot of different variables that can make that change from one year to the next.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman
O'Brien.
O'Brien.
Thank you. Mr. Mack, I noticed that you stay within the mayor's proposed budget, which is grand. But however, I see a drop from 2019 of approximately 1,000. Is there any cut in services or anything that reflects that?
Let me take a look here. That is for the administration?
Yeah, welfare administration, right.
I think we went up by $200
I don't- Okay.
total. I think everything was level funded except that miscellaneous supplies line.
Okay. So it's a 200, okay.
But
I
the-
think it may be in two different categories, so it took me a minute when I first looked at it, too. I was like, I thought we changed this, so.
Our first meeting, getting up to speed.
Yeah, if I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at, on page 188, the
Yes.
bottom line is
Yeah,
a reduction of 11,845.
right.
And
I think,
that again may be, no.
Yes.
I think a big part of that is coming from that benefits category.
Right, okay,
All right.
all right. I think, oh, yes, Alderman Tenza, then Alderman
Thank you.
Wiltshire.
So can I just ask, it looks like the amount you were allocated for FY19 for wages, it looks like you're gonna spend a little bit less than that by the end of the fiscal year.
Yes.
Are you short-staffed as well? Or is that just a cost savings? What accounts for that?
Oh, thank you for that question. We had a staff person leave, and we hired a new staff person, and so there were some adjustments there in the entry-level salary versus someone who had been with the department for a few years, so.
Oh, can I just follow up and ask, do you expect that line item to stay the same for the fiscal year 2020? Still at the $330,000 level, that's what you project?
Yes.
And then, if I may, Mr. Chairman, as well, it looks like there's, you've asked a reduction in money that essentially is being paid out for folks who are in need. Is that a projection based on a lack of need going forward, or something else?
Yes, would you like me to move into that part of the budget to go over all the other lines? We did make some adjustments on page 189 to the general assistance budget, which we kind of operate with two budgets. One is the administration budget, and then this is the general assistance budget. So I believe that's the budget you're referring to, Alderman Tenza. We did make some adjustments in reductions in a couple of the lines, and it was based on trends and projections, things that we're seeing over the course of this current fiscal year, as well as taking into consideration some potential changes in some of the financial standards, which we propose and we monitor, and we may update them every 12 to 24 months. And those financial standards are the figures upon which we base eligibility. They include things like fair market rent, cost of living, and food allowances within the households. And again, based on our trends for this current fiscal year, we should come in under budget. If we predict some increased costs in like rental expenses, for example, even with those increased costs, we feel that we can come in, this is a comfortable budget overall for our general assistance category. We did reduce the medical assistance line by $7,500 because we're just seeing, we haven't spent that much up until this point in the current fiscal year. And with changes in health insurance and prescription coverage, most people are able to get their prescriptions at a reasonable cost, and they don't need to come to the city for that assistance. So that's why we propose that reduction. We've also seen a reduction in requests and needs around food and maintenance or personal care household goods. So we've reduced those lines by $1,000 and $500 accordingly, for a total of $9,000 reduction in the general assistance budget.
All set.
Just one more
Follow-up?
follow, if I may. On the shelter assistance, do you expect by the end of the fiscal year, you'll spend roughly around another $200,000 or a little less to help people with shelter?
I don't predict we'll need to spend all that money for the rest of this fiscal year.
And if I may just make one comment, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
I think this is one section of the budget where myself and probably a lot of people here wouldn't mind if we spent all the money that we give you to make sure that people who are in need of these benefits are getting them.
I appreciate that, Alderman. We do, based on our guidelines and our financial standards, we do a very detailed assessment of applicants that come in requesting assistance. We do help a good percentage of the folks that do come in for assistance. We also work very closely with community partners and different nonprofit organizations in the community. So if there's a household that we can't assist or we can't assist fully, we may assist them partially and then connect them to one of these other resources to supplement anything we've assisted. Our goal is to prevent homelessness and keep people housed as best we can. And so we do our due diligence to make sure that the people that need the assistance are getting the assistance. If we can't help them, or if we can only help them partially, we do what we can to connect them to those alternative resources.
Alderman Wiltshire?
Thank you. $200, Mr. Mack, you're going to break the bank. No, seriously, on a serious note, probably 15 years ago, how long have you been with the welfare department, Bob? 10, 12? 17, okay.
Or so years.
So 17 or so years ago, this budget was way over $1 million, and the department was, you know, it didn't run quite as well as it does now. I give Mr. Mack a lot of credit for saving the city a lot of money. I mean, it's more well-staffed and very well-run. I think it's one of the best-run departments we have, so thank you for that.
Thank
I have a hypothetical question. Say I'm a low-income senior and I live in a mobile home and pipes burst underneath my mobile home, and I come to you because I can't live there. What can you do for me?
That's a good question.
I need shelter.
Alderman
I can't live there. There's no heat. There's the burst pipe under my...
Yep. So there's any number of things. The first thing we do is give you a lengthy application to fill out, and then we ask questions. We find out what resources you have. We go through that application. We verify income versus expenses. We may look at if there's any way to save that housing situation. If you can get those pipes fixed, we work closely with other city departments. Sometimes the urban programs department may have a grant or a program that could help repair those types of things. If you're in a situation where you're awaiting repair on a property, we may be able to house you temporarily in a motel. until such time as those repairs can be made. We may also give information about elderly housing programs in the community. And so a lot of it is based on the individual household and the needs and what's identified during our eligibility interview. And as you mentioned, we have some very good staff in the department, and they're very aware of the resources in the community, how to do these eligibility assessments, and provide some case management type services to connect people to the appropriate resources. So that's
That's
a hypothetical of
exactly
how
the
we make.
answer I wanted. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All set?
Yep, thank you.
Alderman Jettie.
Could you, if you wouldn't mind, could you explain to me how how your department works with, I know there are a lot of agencies in town that help people. I'm thinking of
Yes.
the, Corpus Christi provides food and assistance, rent assistance and security deposits and that type of thing. And the, the other shelter, soup kitchen does the same kind of
Yes.
thing. And then you got the Salvation Army and the United Way and churches. And
Yes.
how does that all work?
In a lot of cases, it works very seamlessly, which is a good thing about our community and our partnerships in our community. One of the groups that we participate in as the welfare department is the Greater Nashua Continuum of Care. And it's those agencies that you mentioned, Alderman Jettie, that participate in that gathering, if you will, which meets every month. And we talk about issues related to homelessness and also prevention and things like you were talking about, access to services, food assistance, utility assistance, assistance with security deposits to get into new housing if that's the need. So we do a lot of networking. We have a couple of subgroups that work together. One is the Financial Assistance Network, which is the welfare department is represented. The Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter, Corpus Christi, St. Joseph's Hospital. Now I got to make sure I name everybody. The Front Door Agency.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. And the Salvation Army, thank you, Alderman Lopez. And so this group of agencies gets together to talk about different resources that they have kind of on a month-to-month basis. A lot of these agencies and organizations operate on charitable grants and different things like that. And so they talk about who has funds and what they can assist with over, month to month. And so we continue to work together and network around cases. We also have an Ending Homelessness Committee that I get to chair and bring together a lot of the housing providers, Harbor Homes, and some of the veteran services and some of the transitional housing providers like Marguerite's Place, Norwell Home, the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter. Again, I'm catching myself and having to name all these agencies that I don't want to leave out. But all these community partners get together and focus on addressing issues of low income and financial needs in the community. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does somewhat, but could I follow up?
Follow up?
So is your agency the place of first resort or last resort, or wherever people go,
Yeah.
people try to help them, and how does it?
I'm sorry, that's another good question, Alderman Jettie. It used to be that we were the last place to go, but it seems that a lot of organizations want a decision coming out of our department first to see what we can assist with. It also depends on what the need is, because sometimes people are coming looking for assistance with a driver's license, for example, and we don't have general assistance to meet that need, so we would refer them to another agency to meet that need. During certain times of year, there are other programs in the community, like the Fuel Assistance Program operated through Southern New Hampshire Services. And if it's during that particular time of year where someone can apply for that program, we will send them there versus determining their eligibility with us and us assisting them directly. Now, outside of the fuel assistance year, they may come to us and we may then assist with that utility. So it's dependent on different variables as to who goes where first. But ultimately, it really comes back to a partnership, and I've heard it said, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, that the organizations in the greater Nashua community work very well together.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All set? Any other questions? Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. One final, well, for me anyway, one question. The shelters, the assistance that we put folks up into, what are our standards as far as that goes, to ensure that people are staying in a clean, safe environment?
That's a good question, Alderman Clemmons. We assist people in paying for emergency motel placements. It's really up to a facility if they're going to accept our payment through our voucher system or not. We can tell people who generally accepts our vouchers. We don't usually find housing and place people in housing because we're not a housing agency, but we will tell them to try a couple of facilities that may have availability and will accept our payment. And so those are the vendors we generally work with.
Okay, so we don't necessarily direct people to certain places?
No.
Okay.
All set. Do you find that the current low unemployment rate and the increase in salaries associated with the fact that the people in Concord are trying to raise the minimum wage, you find that is going to impact you in any way?
I would think that would be a positive. If people's incomes are going up, they need less assistance.
Right.
They can cover their own costs of living. Sometimes, however, with those types of increases come other increases in the cost of goods and services or rental costs. So sometimes they offset. It depends.
Okay.
Each case is different and unique as we evaluate them.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Any final words?
Just, thank you. Just in closing, I would ask that the aldermen strongly consider our request for the budget as is, although it does somewhat go over the recommendations that were put forth by the mayor at the 1.75%. You can see in our report all the accomplishment that the Division of Public Health and Community Services, under the leadership of the management staff, working with our partners, that we've been able to do over the course of last year, and we continue this year with major accomplishments. We've celebrated our second year as an accredited health department. We've been able to secure additional funding for our services, for leadership for not just our division, but also leadership development for some of our community partners. What has been requested in our budget, it's what's needed. We could have requested more, except under the guidance of our finance manager, we stayed within a certain percentage, but would really ask for that consideration. I did hear that it's going to take a vote of 10 aldermen to approve anything over what was requested, and so we ask for that strong consideration so that we can continue to do the work that we do at the level and capacity in which we do it. We're fully staffed. We have one position that's open in environmental health that will be filled, and we're hoping to be able to maintain at the level that we're able to work in right now.
So, just so you know, it takes 10 votes if we increase it even $1 over what the total budget of the mayor requested. It's not by department.
Okay, sounds good for us.
The other thing I noticed when I went through is what you requested in your department request is exactly what the mayor authorized. So are you looking at something in addition to what is your request?
No.
So the mayor matched everything you asked for, so.
We're very happy with that.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Thank you for coming in. So unfinished business,
None.
new business resolutions.
Before us this evening is R 19-114, authorizing the mayor and city treasurer to issue bonds not to exceed the amount of $6 million for the Phase 3 lined landfill expansion of the Nashua Four Hills landfill to include engineering services. There was going to be a public hearing on March 25th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the Automatic Chamber. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to table R 19-114 pending the public hearing scheduled for March 25th, 2019 at 7 p.m. in the Automatic Chamber.
So the motion on the floor is to table R 19-114 until such time as the public hearing is held. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Alderman O'Brien.
Also before us is R 19-115, relative to the supplemental appropriation of $120,000 of unanticipated revenue from Fund 6000 Solid Waste Fund, account number 44286, cover material revenue, into Fund 6000 Solid Waste Fund, account number 55699, other contracted services. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Motion on the floor is to recommend final passage, and I'll just remind people that this is the money that was talked about when we had the recycling explanation. They have the internal funds to cover the 120,000 to keep the recycling going through the end of the year, and that's what this motion is. So recommending the final passage to the full board will be one step closer to not having to throw recyclables into the landfill. Any discussion? Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. I missed, I was unable to attend the presentation, but my understanding is they're looking for alternatives. Is that correct?
Alternatives to recycling?
Yeah, so in other words, you know, I don't know if there's, you know, alternate vendors or if they're looking for different ideas of things that we can do for, you know, recycling materials and things like that. I don't know if that was
It's
part
my
of the presentation
understanding,
or
and
not.
other people can chime in, I think they're always looking for alternatives. The biggest issue is China is not taking
Right.
as much back, and it's been more and more difficult, the more expensive to do the separation on single stream. So they are looking at other ways to use some of our recycled material, but the issue right now is they've run out of money that was allocated by this board to do the recycling, and they need another 120,000 so they don't take the recycled material and just dump it in the landfill, taking up
Right.
very valuable space. And they had the additional revenue within their own budget to cover it, so this is authorizing them to expend that additional 120,000 out of their budget to cover recycling. Follow-up?
Sorry, yeah, I guess I'm just wondering if it was mentioned that, you know, obviously this is a supplemental appropriation, so I'm wondering I'm hoping that they went over what they're doing to try to address this issue for next year as we get into the budget season for recycling. I mean, is it gonna cost us $120,000 more next year if we continue to do what we're doing, or are we trying to reduce that cost by doing something else?
Well, the public works in the budget follows what we just went through, so if you look in there, you may see what they're asking for recycling. I didn't quite go that far tonight, but we can look that up. But I would assume, based on what the current situation is, the recycling, that number has gone up. Alderman Kelly, then Alderman Jettie, then Alderman Lopez.
Everybody wants to talk about this one. I actually wasn't at the meeting, so I'll be interested to hear everything that was said. But I am on the Energy and Environment Committee, and we've talked a lot about this. I want to just put out there that it's not just a Nashua problem, it's a nationwide problem. And one of the things that we're going to be focusing on this year is really working on reducing. So recycling is a great first step, but reducing how much you put in the recycling, how much you put in the trash. I know that the new compost bins are on sale right now. I started composting last year, but just looking at things that are alternatives to putting it in recycling, because they're not taking it. It's just how things are going. So we need to kind of change our behavior.
Alderman Jettie?
So I'm the liaison to the Board of Public Works, and they, sometime last year, they developed a recycling subcommittee that has been looking at the, at the problem as you suggest. The the amounts that we pay to have the recycling taken away by Casella, which is the company that we have a long-term contract with. But, their rates vary depending on what they can do with the stuff. And so one of the things that we've done is we invested in a cover. I don't know if you've been to the landfill recently, but there's a fabric cover. It looks like a big tent that covers the recycling area. And the purpose of that is to keep the recycling stuff from getting wet from rain or snow, which adds to the weight. And that's how we pay for they come in and they fill their truck up and then they weigh it on the way out. And then they weigh it down at their place. And that's how the amount that we get charged with is based on. And keeping it dry has had a significant reduction in the weight of the material. However, the other factor is, what they can do with this stuff. And those rates have gone up and down. It was the beginning of last year, it was less than $60 a ton, and it's gone up to over $80 a ton. And right now, I think it's around 70 a ton. And so the rates, they were talking about it going up to over $100 a ton. And so it's fluctuated. And as a result, they've run out of money. There was $400,000 that was allocated for this that they're about to run out of, and that's why they're asking for the extra $120,000. They tell me that for next year's budget, they're requesting only another $400,000, hoping that would be sufficient. They are looking at different alternatives. This whole thing is in a big state of flux. As the China market has shut down, there are the recycling coordinator, Sally Highland, explained to us that there are companies in the United States that are starting to develop processes by which to deal with the recycling material. She told us that we used to be able to sell the cardboard and the paper, but the American, a lot of the American mills that did that kind of thing have shut down because of the Chinese competition. Now that China has stopped doing this, she told us that there are a couple of Chinese companies that have come over here and have bought some mills, and that that might be a source of dealing with the paper. The thing is, it's in a state of flux, and the recycling committee at the Board of Public Works, faced with this problem, there were some people who said, let's just put it in the recycling, in the landfill. But the landfill, the other bond issue that we tabled tonight for the public hearing, that's to build phase 3. If phase 3 doesn't get built, we're going to run out of space within a year. So, phase 3 will give us another 10 years, and we're asking for a permit for phase 4, which would give us some additional time. But it's all finite. The landfill is going to fill up eventually. And, what some people are afraid of is that a few years down the road, someone's going to figure out that that this recycling material, especially the plastic stuff, the plastic stuff, it all comes from petroleum. And there are companies that are figuring out how to turn it back into petroleum. And, we just fear that someday we're going to wake up and say, you did what with that stuff? You buried it in the landfill? What, were you nuts? So we're hoping that technology catches up with this and comes up with a solution. And in the short term, we don't want to abandon the recycling program for fear that, the alternative is putting it in the landfill, which we don't think is the right thing to do. Alternatively, you've got people who haven't, by habit and by investing in these totes and things, are committed to the recycling program, and to just, tell them that we're going to take their recycling and put it in the landfill is going to cause a lot of people to just stop doing it, just throw it in the trash, and then try to, when we figure this out, to try to convert them back into a recycling program. We think in the short term, we think the 120,000 is a good investment.
All set, or do you have a follow-up?
No, I just, a quick comment. No, I appreciate that, and I'm glad to know that there's a committee working on this. I'm wondering if it would be too bold for the for the city to consider trying to find somebody to come in and locate here to do that kind of work, and that we could benefit on. Because I know that there are municipalities across the country as well as the world that are doing things like you said, turning plastics into pavement, turning plastics into usable products that they could be the recycling bin itself. And it might not be a bad idea to think about putting out an RFP to basically tell a startup company, come here, you can have our recycling, so you'll have the material, and just figure it out. And we'll give you the rent for free. I don't know, because we have to think of something, because the landfill is a precious value, resource that not a lot of other communities have. And the longer that we can keep it, from filling up, the better off Nashua will be. So, I think we need to really take some bold steps, and kind of be a leader on this, as opposed to sitting back and waiting for the market to figure it out.
Alderman Lopez?
Honestly, Alderman Jettie was very thorough. So 90% of what I was going to say was already covered. I agree with Alderman Clemens that we should be taking some leadership in this. I don't know what we have to offer a recycling company, but I mean, we do have an awkward building on Burke Street, and we might be able to think outside the box a little bit. I will say, though, that they did see this coming to some extent when we were talking about it last year at the budget. They warned us that the prices might go through the roof, and were very likely to. And in the presentation they had the expenses, and they were like, forgive me if anyone else remembers, but it was like 5,000 to 50 in 1 quarter. Like, it was a crazy leap. So their presentation was very illuminating. I think anybody who's interested in the topic should definitely check out what they did, what they presented. They also had some steps that individuals could take. They were focusing on education strategies too for the public, like don't put your recyclables in a plastic bag because you can't recycle the plastic bag. Stuff like that can help reduce the overall overhead, so that DPW doesn't have to not collect it 1 week, so that the person who put the wrong things in the recycling bin cleans it out and can just more efficiently collect and then process what we do.
Okay, Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, I haven't got much. Alderman Jettie perfectly gave an explanation of this, but basically, being at the meeting and what I heard, again, to echo Alderman Jettie, the dump has landfill, I should say, but it does have a life expectancy to it. So you could look at this as many different ways, but basically, what we're doing is we're buying time at $120,000 to get this off-site, not in our landfill. And maybe if we come back next year and it costs us $120,000 additionally, we're buying time, which is the greater cost to our landfill. So still, it's not a good deal. I admit that, additional money, but I think compared to losing the landfill early, could just imagine the cottage fees of all material in the city being outsourced. This is saving us, so this in a way is a good thing.
Alderman Clemmons?
Thank you. Yeah, the only thing that concerns me is that is the flat line of the budget from 400,000 to 400,000, because clearly the prices are going up. So, you know, I'll say, I won't say more. I'll save it for when it comes up in the budget. But again, if that's the road we're going to take, is we're going to keep it at 400,000, then we have to be doing something else to reduce that cost. And from my point of view, my perspective, one of the things that we could be doing is trying to attract a startup that wants to be able to have access to materials at no cost, that could then resupply the city with, you know, at a reduced cost, things like pavement alternatives to that, and different things. So.
Alderman Jennings?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and I'm on the National Regional Planning Commission, and I if you find a company that wants to locate here, there's an endless supply of plastic recyclables that all these towns are looking for a place to put, and I echo what Alderwoman Kelly said. The real answer is to reduce the amount of refuse, whether it's recyclable or trash. The real answer here is to reduce the amount that everybody produces, and if people could learn to consume less and produce less refuse, that would be a big step in the right direction.
I just read an article today that a whale washed up on the beach somewhere. I'm not sure where it was, but it died from dehydration. Go figure, a whale in the ocean. Really? I didn't know that whales get their water from the food they eat. And this whale had hundreds of pounds of plastic in its stomach, and it couldn't take any food in. So it died. And the oceans are getting so polluted with plastic. One of the things here that I think we have issues with is every place you go, every store, be it a grocery store or I shopped at a couple stores today and they put everything in a plastic bag. And those plastic bags don't help the recycling because they mess everything up. I know a lot of people that use these plastic bags to pick up after their dog. That makes it even worse. You know,
Then you have a
people that are
permanently encapsulated dog poo.
so the people that are
Preserved
sitting
for
on
all
these
time.
local committees, I wouldn't be opposed to banning the use of plastic bags in any retail outlet. I went and got the reusable bags from Market Basket, and I use them all the time. For one thing, it's easier to carry than that stupid plastic bag. But Alderman Kelly.
Just to comment on that, I know that Alderman Jettie and I have talked about that quite a bit. And I think currently we are unable to do that because we need to be released by the state to be able to come up with our own local ordinances. So that's what's holding us back from doing that currently.
If we only knew a state rep.
Jan might be able to speak to it. I know there is a piece up at the State House right now to allow that.
Alderman Clemmons.
It's not stopping the Portsmouth City Council from going ahead and doing it. It was just on WMUR tonight.
And here comes one of our local.
Portsmouth
just going to attempt to do it. I think I'm a little afraid that they won't, because this is the second attempt that they're making. I just wanted to make a point. When we were listening to the presentation, we understood that this money is for 3 months. It's to get us to a point where we're able to make a decision. And the biggest issue is that you can't say to the citizens of the whole city that, okay, wait, don't do this anymore, do this. Especially if you're not sure that do this is actually going to get where you want to go. So this is a buffer. This is just a buffer. Now, when we were sitting in the meeting, we heard plastic bottles can be used to make clothing, that some of the plastic that's rougher can be used for mats to lay down for trucks to roll over in odd places. There were lots of things that they're looking at, but they don't have anything yet for us to step into. That's all the 3 months will do for us. It'll just give us that buffer to make sure that we can take care of the city until some decisions can be made.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we want to vote on the motion. Again, the motion is to, relative to supplemental appropriation of $120,000 of unanticipated revenue from the fund's 6,000 solid waste fund account 44286, cover material revenue into fund 6,000 solid waste fund account 55699, other contracted services. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also before us is R 19116, changing the purpose of up to $10,000 of unexpended bond proceeds from the roof replacement work at Fairgrounds Middle School and Ledge Street Elementary School to pay the costs of roof assessments at Maine Dunstable, Birch Hill, and Bicentennial Elementary Schools. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion is for final passage of R 19116. I'll speak to it because I'm directly involved in it. We had money allocated via bond to do the roof at Fairgrounds Middle School. The job was efficient enough where we had money left over and we completed the other part of the roof that wasn't covered initially. So the entire roof at Fairgrounds Middle School is now new, thank goodness. And again, there was a little bit of money left over. And if we do the engineering at these 3 schools for the 10,000 that's left, and it's fine with the treasurer for that, then we have the engineering done, and next time we're ready to do the roof, we know what it's going to take, and it's easier to put out the bid. So it uses money that's already been allocated, doesn't require public hearing, and it will go a long way to saving money in the end. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also before us is R 19117, changing the use of funds for a wastewater fund capital improvements project from Bridge Street overflow detention basin improvements to wet weather facility screen, facility screen and rake upgrades. This was also assigned to the Board of Public Works to appear on its March 28, 2019 agenda. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Motion is for final passage of R 19117. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Alderman O'Brien.
Also before us is R 19122, discontinuing 3 expendable trust funds. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, the motion on the floor is for final passage of R 19122. I had communication with Treasurer Fredette this afternoon. These 3 expendable trusts have been totally run their course, and to take them off the books, they need this motion. And I had the printout, but I don't, if necessary, oh, you got it right there. So it's the Julia Ward Fund, the Public Works Data Communications Improvement, and the Hurricane Katrina Relief Fund. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also before us is R 19-123, relative to the adoption of the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget for the City of Nashua, General Enterprise, and Special Revenue Funds. There is going to be a public hearing scheduled for May 16th, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the Nashua High School North Auditorium. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to table R 19-123.
So the motion is to table the budget R 19-1223. Now, typically, if we do this correctly, every one of the budget meetings where we talk to one of these departments, we should take it off the table and put it back on the table. Former Alderman McCarthy thought that was sort of overkill, but technically, that's the way you're supposed to do it. We could table it until a public hearing, but, so we'll make a decision on that by the next budget meeting when we talk to one of the other departments, but technically, we should take it off the table, but we have to put it on the table now. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. New business ordinances.
There is none.
Okay, R 18-102 was tabled and it still has not come back to us. They're still in discussions. They will be coming with a sidebar resolution to us as soon as legal gets done with it. So we'll be addressing that at some point here in the future. And that's just to allow part of this bargaining unit to get funded for they having an issue with data, hard copy papers. They don't have any place to put them, so they're putting them on, they're PDFing them, so, but you have to pay people to do that. And there's only certain people that can do these police records that way, but just ignore it for now, it'll come. But this stays on the table. General discussion? No generals?
I wondered if you could let us know what's in the expendable trust funds, like the welfare trust fund, the snow trust fund. You know, as we go through the budget, I'd like to know what's in those trust funds.
It's in here.
It's in here?
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay.
It's under, yeah. Just looked at it this afternoon, I forget what color,
Page like-
green page?
Yes.
No, they're
Green, yeah,
Blue.
blue.
Oh, way in the back, that's, yeah. So, yeah, that is in there.
Okay,
346.
thank you.
The other thing that we will be discussing group by group, they didn't have anything, is the capital improvements. Everybody has a copy of the capital improvements. Not a lot has been allocated in that direction, but as we go through the different departments, the things that apply to them we'll be discussing. Any other general discussion? Yes, Alderman Jettie.
So the people from the department that spoke to us earlier said that, you know, they were asking for more money, and you said that they've got everything, the mayor gave them everything they asked for. Is
According to
that-
this book,
Can you point out to us where that is, so that,
okay, if you look across the top, you've got the 2019 original budget, so that's what they were budgeted last year. The 2019 available budget is the funding that's left, and a lot of times that's low because things are spent across the year. And this is up to February, so it's the next few months up through the end of June. They still have expenditures. I'm sorry, the available budget, and I was looking at the actuals, is through 2/28/19. That's what they've spent so far against their available budget. The 2020 department request, that's the amount of money that the department asked the mayor for. And then the mayor's proposed is the last column, and in the department we just went through, unless I'm switched the wrong pair of glasses, they're identical. So everything they asked for, he approved.
Okay.
That won't be the case with all departments, believe me.
I was gonna say, like, in this one department, he approved their requests, but there's probably other ones that requested more and got less.
Yes. And I'm pretty sure I'm going out on a limb, but I don't think the mayor increased anybody's budget from what they asked for. Just saying. Overall, by the way, I had several meetings with the mayor and a meeting with the department heads, so I know some of them aren't happy. But they're trying to live with the requests. Some of them can't, and they'll tell you when they come through here. It's a very difficult budget this year, and the biggest problem is we had a $3 million increase in health insurance. I, for one, want a very thorough explanation of why that happened. I believe part of it is we had a health fund, special revenue fund, and over the last few years, we've been cutting into it, and I think it's almost gone. And I think that may be part of this. So I want to know, what's an expenditure and what are we putting in the bank to cover other years? But that's the thing that's killing it. That's an 11% increase by itself. And it's shortchanging some of the other departments to keep the overall tax increase under 3%. Alderman Tenzo.
Can I just ask a question? Do we have a sense of contribution to the state for retirement? How much that's increased this year for us?
Ooh, that's a sore subject with me, but.
And if not for tonight, but at some point during, because,
Yeah. That will be covered.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, I think that some of the people present in this room as we speak are trying to help us with that, as well as school funding. So I'm not sure when, if they're successful, when that takes effect. And I'm not entirely sure whether that take effect in the 2020 budget. Alderman Schmidt.
Just to let you know, there are 2 plastic bills that will hit the House floor tomorrow or Wednesday.
They made them out of plastic?
Plastic. Plastic.
Yeah, written
Plastic
on
straws
plastic.
and plastic bags. So they are both recommended to pass, and I can give you updates when I have the information.
Yeah, does everybody get the legislative update, the green? Yeah, that's pretty thorough.
Good.
Tell you when to take a drive to Concord.
I'm sorry.
Anyway.
Sorry, what legislative update, green, what does that mean?
It's a legislative bulletin. I think anybody can get it, right?
It's not the House calendar, is it? Is it the House calendar?
Well, House calendar's in it. It's green. It's several pages usually. It comes out like at least weekly.
The House calendar is what he means, yeah.
And if you don't get that, I'm sure one of our legislators could.
I can make
Send a
sure you
copy
have the
to you.
link.
I used to ignore it, and then I read it thoroughly now, because,
I'd be
Is it
interested
Something
in
that comes electronically?
You
Yes.
can get it, yeah.
yep. Okay, there were no members of the public, so I'm going to go on a limb and say no public comment. Remarks by Alderman. Welcome Alderman Clemens to the Budget Committee.
Thank you.
No need for non-public. Do I hear a motion? Alderwoman Kelly. Motion to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 8:25.
Jetty, what happened?